Well, it's the bottom of the hour, Tim.
I know. You ready to rock here?
I think so.
Okay. I did make it so I know how to actually share the video that we want to play every single time. So it's working on my end right now. So welcome everyone to another episode of Between Two Coasts. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and play our little intro video. A little shout out to Bob Wilson for this one. Should be playing on your side now. Just such a catchy jingle there, right?
Just makes you want to dance.
That's right. So I'm Tim Bennock with QLI.
And I'm Mark Pugh with Preferred Medical, and together we are Between
Two Coasts. See, we got it. We're doing better at this. I like it.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Welcome to another episode. We're on episode 7 now, Mark. I feel like this was kind of just an idea that we had, and now we're seven deep into it. I like it. So as the description says, and if you've been with us or joined us in the past, you know this is just our attempt at recreating a casual conversation on the conference floor, catching up with some friends in the industry, with a little bit of a guidance with a theme. But so today we do have a theme, and our theme is digital branding. And so with that, Mark, I'll let you get started.
Yeah, we're very happy to have with us two longtime buddies of mine, Jonathan Mast, the Digital Strategy Director, easy for me to say, for Sedgwick. Carlos Luna, who's Vice President of Marketing and Business Development for Risico. They both lead the digital branding of their employers, but they also, to some degree, have latched on to their personal branding as well. Carlos has Carlos Luna News, right? I got that right?
Did.
Jonathan is just like Iron Man that's running and just doing crazy stuff all the time. That's his brand.
All over the place.
Yeah. So they're going to share, the last year has been obviously difficult in the switch virtual from a COVID standpoint, especially when it comes down to marketing and branding, establishing new relationships, maintaining existing relationships. And so both of them are going to kind of share their perspectives on what they have discovered over the past year, and maybe some ideas as to how that's going to translate in the future. But we always like to start off with each of our guests telling our audience something that they may not know about them. So Jonathan, if you want to start us off and share something that maybe the audience doesn't know about you yet.
Well, I don't know. You just gave away like my only credibility, which is, I guess while I might not look like it, I am an avid runner. I do ultra marathons, and people always say, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Well, that's anything longer than a typical marathon. So, 50 miles, 100K type thing." So I guess one thing that most people don't know with my running has been the most amazing thing I've done was just an adventure, and I did what's called the double crossing of the Grand Canyon in one day. So my buddy and I, we ran down, across, and up, and down, across, and back out in a one-day time frame, and it was amazing just to see things that most people don't get to see other than when they do the Chevy Chase at the Grand Canyon and go, "Yep, I'm out of here." And,
yeah,
pretty cool.
I don't mind driving 100 miles. No flipping way I'm running them. So, you did a video one time too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did one for the Bigfoot where we did the full circumference of Mount St. Helens State Park, which was a 100K race a couple years ago. Pretty cool.
Yeah, Jonathan, when I tell people I may not look like a runner, they look right at me like, "Nah, you don't." And that's because
and you're not, so it works out great.
So it's a fair assessment.
So Carlos, want to share something that most people may not know about you?
Yeah, so let me take this opportunity. I want to share a couple of things, if that's okay. The first thing is that I have the privilege of serving on a wonderful association called the Hispanic and Insurance Risk Management Association. It's got a great board right now. We've been working extremely hard on our next event on the 4th of May, which will be celebrating the Cinco de Mayo. So I want to invite all of our guests or all of the people that are watching us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're watching from, to join us on the 4 de Mayo to celebrate the Cinco de Mayo. If you're interested in registering, shoot me an email personally, cluna@risico.com, or you can email the organization directly at contact@herma.org. That's the first thing. The second thing, I'm afraid I'm not as fit or as good looking as Mr. Jonathan Eye Candy Mast. I think that's his official handle for some social
That's his
network.
new, wow, okay.
But I do have a practical skill to offer that most people don't know about. But I'm going to let you guys guess, just one guess each. Mark, what do you guess that hidden talent is?
Well, I know you were a Christian rapper back in the day.
Oh, wait a minute. Time out. That's a little too much. That's a little too far back. Okay, no more guesses for you. Jonathan, how about you? One guess.
I don't know. You were a barber in your past life.
I was not a barber, Tim, how about you?
Yeah, I was gonna go opera singer. Like you.
No, but I do know a wonderful opera singer. He lives in Utah, works in the industry. I won't mention his name. I don't want to embarrass him, but that's not me. I'm actually a pretty darn good nail polisher. I have two daughters, 5 and 7, that would say that I put the man in manicure.
Oh, there it is. I like it.
Hey, look, I know you got to entertain yourself.
Well, I may have to tap into those skills. So I have a 2.5-year-old daughter and a soon to be 5-year-old daughter. So I'm sure that those skills will come in handy sometime in my life. So I may be reaching out to you for some guidance.
Tim,
there.
I tell you what, my goodness, on Daddy Cure Day, there's another one. See, it seems like all their worries just like melt away, right? It doesn't matter like how cruel the playground was that day. It doesn't matter how mean big sister was or how, irreverent little sister was. When we're getting our nails done, well, when Daddy's doing their nails, rather, I don't do my nails, as you can see.
I was going to say, I'm glad you clarified that you were working with your daughters, because that was.
I actually feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about having honed my skills in manicure. So there you have it. Something you didn't know.
You should. I think that's awesome. All right. Well, to kind of roll with the topic here today. So Carlos, you mentioned during our prep call that businesses do business with people, not with businesses. In this virtual environment, it's been much easier to maintain existing relationships. We talked about that pretty in depth, than create new ones. So how have your tactics evolved over the past year plus to either, maintain those existing ones, or what kind of secrets have you come up with or ways to create new ones in this virtual environment?
Well, I appreciate that, Tim. Let me expand just a little bit on those statements. So I sincerely believe that in B2B transactions and B2B sales, businesses don't do business with other businesses. Really, it's people doing business with other people, right? At the core of every business transaction, there are two individuals. You have a seller and you have a buyer. And the dynamic of the relationship, or the lack thereof, between these two individuals will play a role in the decision-making process for the buyer. Make no mistake. Let me take it a step further. So people do business with people that they know, that they like, and that they trust, right? And that makes a lot of sense. They do business with someone that they've known for a while, that they actually like their ethics, they agree with on certain things, and frankly, that they can step up to the plate to fix issues when problems arise. In my 46 years of marketing, do the math. That's right. I was born to do marketing. I'm so cheesy today. I can't help it.
You probably arrived with a commercial, right?
Yeah. It's been really tough, in terms of the whole COVID thing. And I'll get into that here in just a moment. But in my many years of doing this line of work and networking, connecting with people, being a brand ambassador, I've never met anyone who was willing to sign a contract with someone that they just met. I mean, that's just the truth, right? People want to do business with people who do what they say, who will fulfill their promises. And as I said earlier, will step in, get their hands dirty if they need to fix an issue, if an issue arises.
Mhm.
You know, one thing that we tend to overlook is marketing professionals is the fact that the trust building element starts from the outset, from the onset of the relationship. They begin at the very first encounter, right? Before COVID, those encounters were often on a conference trade floor, trade show floor, at a networking event somewhere. In today's environment, it's often through our website or through emails that they read, through our corporate email campaigns, or potentially a webinar that they're watching us like today. You know, it's been pretty challenging over the last year, really, to rely solely on the digital strategies such as websites, emails, and webinars. But most individuals that are watching this webinar, I think, would agree that building trust is not always as intuitive without the face-to-face element, Tim, as you mentioned earlier. I think that a big reason for that is because there are certain intangible elements that play a key role in relationship building in a face-to-face scenario that aren't always there in a virtual setting. I'll give you an example. Body language or other physical cues that often help the parties, you know, adjust to the conversation. If somebody is fidgety when you're talking to them, they're probably short on time, right? If they keep looking at their watch, they're short on time. There are cues that you follow that really allows you to be more courteous to someone in a face-to-face situation, whereas in a virtual setting, it's virtually impossible. In fact, in my experience, and maybe Jonathan, you know, can lend his expertise here as well, but in my experience, it's been really difficult to begin new relationships via the webinar channel. Unless you're doing a big event like we are today, where we likely have a lot of our industry friends that we've have all invited, right? They know us, they trust us, they like us. In most cases, they find me pretty corny, but they still like me. They've decided to join. But short of that, it's been difficult, you know, to really start new relationships through the webinar model. Now, in my opinion, if you want to be effective in relationship building in a virtual setting, and this is where my guidance comes into everybody watching this webinar today, you really have to be deliberate and intentional about maintaining the human touch to the online meetings. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to go out of your way. You've got to learn about your client, about your prospective client, and frankly, how they're doing. And when I say how they're doing, I don't necessarily mean from a business perspective. After all, you're speaking to people, right, that have real emotions, they have real goals, and then you'll really start to genuinely build some meaningful relationships using the virtual model. Look, I think that we have to remind ourselves often that the pandemic has affected all of us, from sellers to buyers and everyone in between in a deep emotional and social way, right? So I found that some of the most meaningful and most effective relationship building conversations that I have had through the virtual setting with both clients and prospective clients have been equally about how each of us have been coping with the stresses that are presented by the pandemic, as much as it's been about the technical aspect of the industry that we work in and in our services, right? The services that Risico has to offer. I think that as we distance ourselves from the pandemic, as we put it behind us as a society, we're really going to find that some of the most reliable relationships probably with clients and prospects grew significantly during this period of time. And really, I think it's going to be a direct result of taking that empathic approach that I'm describing. Let me put it in a nutshell for you guys. Great effective marketing during COVID-19 is as much about making a connection with people as it is about the technical aspect of the product or the service that you're marketing. My recommendation to the audience today is invest time, put yourself out there, be real with your clients, be real with your prospects. And I think it's going to pay off for you. Otherwise, I think you're going to find yourself in this hamster wheel where you're constantly chasing a goal of creating new meaningful relationships. But because the environment is just so challenging, this one-dimensional environment that we're working with right now, you're not going to find any results. But if you're courageous enough to put yourself out there, talk to clients like they were people that you care about, people that you're concerned of during this period of time, I think it's gonna catapult you into a much better place to really building some key relationships.
For sure.
Insights, Carlos. Jonathan, what have you learned? You've got a slightly larger audience than any of the other three of us because of Sedgwick's perspective on things. How have you seen kind of that maintaining versus creating new relationships working?
Well, I wanted to say it's ironic that I'm on today talking about digital branding because I just got a notice from Twitter that today is my Twitterversary. So that should have been my other thing. I joined Twitter 13 years ago, back when it was actually fun. And there was nobody, back when there was nobody there. So anyway, just happy Twitterversary to me. It's really hard to believe it's been that long. But, you know, I mean, one of my roles at Sedgwick is working on managing our global events that we do around the world. And it's pretty significant. We have several hundred that we're involved in some way, in some capacity. And, you know, I agree with Carlos. I think you do business with people. And then after that, it comes the organization, the trust that people put in that organization. And where I was talking to you guys and to some other people over the past week or two is I would probably never have become friends with Carlos, not because he's not a great guy. I wouldn't have got to know you, Mark. When we met at conferences, we started talking after events through social media. And I think where it's been a challenge from a personal as well as a brand perspective is how do you break down the dimensional wall? So when am I going to, I've stayed in touch with my consistent friends and my industry relationships in many ways. Maybe we've sought each other out at impromptu digital happy hours in the early days and different things. But to meet to meet Joe or Susan, I think it's just been very, very difficult, whether you're in business development, sales, whatever, unless you're putting out, again, a content, and that content where you're driving people to then somehow still feel like they want to digitally connect with you. And let's just be honest, most people, even in face-to-face, some may say, well, I feel more comfortable behind a screen, or if I'm not visually being seen on a conference call, maybe they would speak up. But I still think to reach out and to try to make that relationship connection through, I mean, we just, tons of polls going on right now on LinkedIn. Are you tired of the spam pitches? Are you tired of the, just the constant emails in LinkedIn? The, emails have, I don't know how much they've expanded on every day. Join us for this virtual event. Join us for this virtual event. Join us for this virtual event. So really, we've added so much more noise as digital brand marketers, business people, that I do think we'll have to get away from the pandemic to see some of that ease away, even though I know we're going to talk more about what does the future look like with hybrid. The noise has just become intense. So it is, I guess my number one thing is we strive, obviously at Sedgwick, is you want to put out content and information that people want to engage with. And then from there, what is the action? What is the true strategy? Why do I want you to click on this link, on this graphic, on this news story? And then from there, where does that take that person to do the next transaction? Am I going to call one of our business development people? Am I going to call one of our client services people to help understand why would I want that service? And it still takes a big reach. I think it's taken a bigger reach versus I met you, we're sitting in the same session. We just heard Mark Pugh talk. Hey, what do you do? Who do you work for? That's great. I'm Jonathan with Sedgwick. Wow, we seem to share something in common. Now we're going to stand in the hallway, exchange emails or social media stuff. I'll see you later tonight at the reception, and the relationship builds, and then it builds more. Whereas we're here, I can't reach through. I feel like Spacely Sprockets, showing my age, the Jetsons, I can't. They come on, come on into work. It's just hard. So from my perspective, I do think it has made it difficult to make new relationships. I think maybe we've maintained existing, but when you go to a virtual event, it says, oh, just pop in and chat with somebody. It's still weird. I mean, I'm sorry, and I'm super gregarious, and I am a social butterfly, but just to pick somebody that's on this chat right now that I don't know and go, okay, I'm going to chat with so-and-so.
Yep.
It's, you like I said, I don't know if they're looking like, oh, please don't pick me, please don't pick me. Or, I'm here, but I'm taking notes, I'm answering email, I'm halfway listening to what, Jonathan lost me at Grand Canyon. So that's my take. I think what, we've just seen, not just here, but across the board, and probably what a lot of us are challenged with. So I guess my one thing that we've tried to do, and I think done well, is create content that matters, and that really hasn't changed. It's just now it's even more important that people are bombarded with information. So why do you want to read what we're doing? Sedgwick's got to make it enticing to join in and be part of that conversation.
Yeah, no, I think
I'm sorry, Tim, can I jump in here for just
absolutely, please do.
One of the things that we have tried to do on a content side is really trying to deliver the right content at the right time to the right people, right? So conferences have been very useful because, as Jonathan mentioned, you'll be in a breakout talking about, I don't know, I'll just use this as an example, AB 1465, right, in California. And the presenters are giving you some incredible insight. The session is over. You have fresh content that you can then talk to your neighbor about right there and then, right, to the perfect person that's in the session, likely as interested in the piece of legislation as you are. In a virtual setting, you have to do a little bit more homework, right? So you have to stay apprised as to what the pain points for specific audience groups might be. So if you're focusing on claims adjusters, what pain points are they facing? And then you tailor your content to meet or to address that pain point, hopefully offering a solution that your organization is going to provide, right? So you provide that bridge. It's not as intuitive because you do have to do some research. You do have to spend some time on webinars. I know that there's been a large study, I can't recall it, it's a very prominent university out there that that did a study on webinar fatigue. It's very real, right? So us as marketers, we really have to put that aside and really take the time to do the research to make sure that we are creating content that's relevant, that's timely, and frankly, that's aimed at the right person, right? So lawyers, probably not as interested to hear about legislation from me as they would be from someone else that is actively in a legislative affairs or in a legal capacity. But claims adjusters and maybe other professionals that are out there, nurse case managers, might be very interested in doing it. So you've really got to take the time to learn your audience, learn about the pain points, develop content around that, and then make sure that you're able to deliver it effectively and efficiently. And then I think you're going to see those engagement rates really climb and really see the outcomes that you will see, which will be a great stepping stone to the next step, which would be, hey, you know what, you have any questions about this piece of legislation? I'd be happy to hop on a web chat with you. Let's talk about it. I'd love to share some of the insights that I've heard from my colleagues in Sacramento about it, or my colleagues around the country about it, right? You create very natural, organic connection points with those prospective buyers or prospective clients.
Yeah, I agree. in the same vein of that, of just keeping the conversation going, that's one thing that I do feel like the virtual setting has lacked, right? I mean, Carlos, you mentioned the fact that if you see Mark Pugh speak at an event, and after the fact you go up to say, wonderful job, Mark, I agreed with you on this, disagreed with you on this, let's chat about this. There's usually 4, 5, 6, 10 other people standing around. You can start kind of getting in this conversation, continue it going a little bit. I do feel like there is that disconnect, and I'm curious as to, Jonathan, Carlos, anything that you guys have sponsored, like how or going forward maybe, or something that has been helpful or useful in this past year, how can you continue that conversation going to keep your branding message going, right? So if you sponsor an event, like I just think that there's a lack of like forums or chat after an event, right? So a conference happens, everyone starts thinking of great ideas, good topics, talking points, and then it's dead. I mean, the only way it keeps going is if I personally reach out to Mark. There's not a spot to come together and everyone to really talk about the topics or what things we liked, what things we disliked. I think that has been something that I personally have missed a lot of, is just that, organic conversation at the front of the conference hall that usually continues into the evening. And I kind of wanted to tie that back into the LinkedIn message, right? People doing business with people that then leads to your organization. Well, what are your guys' thoughts on your colleagues voicing their personal opinions to an extent that doesn't do detriment to your professional brand or your organization's brand, but keeping some of those conversations going, right? I do feel like, Jonathan, in our prep meeting, we talked a lot about like people shying away from LinkedIn because they're not searching for a job, right? I think
Right.
it's the exact opposite of that, of like, these conversations should keep going on that platform. In these, there
Yeah.
are certain forums and there are certain groups on there, but even I'm part of 10, 15 groups on LinkedIn. There's no conversations at all happening in those forums. Zero. There's no new content generation. There's nothing, which is sad. I hate that. And I feel like it's a detriment to, organizational brands as well as personal brands. So I know I was a little bit all over the place on there, but hoping you guys can.
Well, I can start on that, definitely. I mean, look, we 13 years of social, digital, whatever you want to call the profession that I do, is it evolved, and thankfully no longer I just get called the Twitter guy. It is a little more in depth, but in the early days, hey, you're the guy that tweets, right? And I'm like, well, and a little more goes into that process. And if you've had any period of time in this space, it's littered with platforms, with efforts to create digital conversations. And yes, LinkedIn groups were there for a while, and we had industry LinkedIn groups. And yet I'm a member of 20-something groups, and there are still some really good ones out there, but it comes back to pre-pandemic, now pandemic. Maybe it was actually, we had more time because we were at home. People were at home all the time. But then as we move to post-pandemic, I think we see the shift back, Tim, to we are just all challenged with so much information. How much can we comprehend as humans? And so if I'm in this group, how do I digest all that, along with however many emails you get every day for your job, how many meetings that we have to be in? And so I spend a good deal of my time promoting brand champions within our organization at Sedgwick, encouraging our thought leaders, our subject matter expert, anybody. I'll take any of our colleagues around the world. I want them, because we know that if you share content on LinkedIn, yes, Sedgwick has a big followership, but if Mark Pugh shares our story, our blog, our magazine article to his 2,000 followers, that's where it gets really granular again. And that almost goes back to Carlos's, you believe in the people.
Yep.
You may have worked at 3 different organizations. I hope if you're at Sedgwick, you're here to stay, because we want you to love it. But people move and they change. So I'm going to, like I used the example this morning, the Suez Canal, we have marine risk people that do all over the world deal with marine cargo issues. Suddenly, marine cargo is cool because everybody in the world saw the Suez Canal thing. And if our experts in that area take the content we create and share with their followers, that begins the dialogue and the discussion. I don't want to be down on LinkedIn groups, but I mean, we've had, we had Google groups, you had LinkedIn groups, you got Facebook groups. They all have some niches here and there. It is just really hard to maintain and keep it going. So I think you have to almost look at your individual groups of followers, which is why I believe it's important to grow your LinkedIn personal brand. You are a personal brand first and foremost. Then as an organization, I hope you become more valuable to Sedgwick or Risco or whoever it is, because then when you bring your personal brand in and you help us as the bigger whole share the information, it helps Sedgwick, it helps Mark, it helps whoever that is. And so, yes, I encourage all our colleagues to be actively involved on LinkedIn, to share, to be active in discussions. I've done this for 13 years. I can count on one hand the number of times I've in 2 different global companies where somebody just did something they shouldn't have done. And 3 of those 4 times, it was really, they weren't intending to be off, to be not in compliance with what you would think would be a good steward of an organization. So most people want to do the right thing. So I'm like, go for it. Share your information, share your knowledge, and do that. But I just think post-pandemic, people are going to come out of this and we're going to be on a whole new track. And so getting people back into discussions outside of one-on-one, or I think what we'll see is maybe after that conference, let's narrow it down to 6 to 8 core people. And could you come join me on a Zoom next Wednesday? We share this common interest, and that's what I think might be the bigger trend.
Yeah, Jonathan, you mentioned you make internal recommendations for people to invest 15 minutes at least 2 or 3 times a week just to go in and do posts, do reading on LinkedIn. Did generally people kind of accept that and understand the value that they're learning, that they're networking, that they're sharing relevant information?
People do. But we're all, what is the old saying? The road is littered, paved with good intentions, not littered, but paved. If I wasn't being paid for this as my true profession, I get it. I live, breathe, whatever, social, digital, eat seats out of my pores. But I mean, we've got people who are selling, doing business development, dealing with major organizations as their client base, and they're really busy. So that's why in my training, my one-on-ones, what I shared is I just say, look, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday, just put a reoccurring event on your calendar. 15 minutes, it's blocked, whatever time of day works for you. Early morning, lunchtime, 4:30, 5:30. And that reminder comes up and says, check LinkedIn, check the Sedgwick page, contribute to a conversation. And you can be really successful with 30 minutes a week. And I've got good stories from our own colleagues of, hey, I sold some business today. I got a new client. I just interacted with someone and it led to $1,000 or a business through this interchange. So that's where I try to sell it. You get the good out of it. But I think we all have to just say it's intentional. It's
Right.
got to be intentional.
Intentional, yeah. Carlos, it's always fun to see you on LinkedIn because you take these big selfies and then the text in there is you've got hashtags like crazy. You've always got like 42 hashtag words and phrases you do and motivational thoughts and stuff. So you've got that mixture of the personal and the professional brand. How do you balance that effectively to kind of make sure that they both see value from sharing, the same platform, if you will.
I appreciate that, Mark. I think the size of the pictures are proportionate to the size of my head. I can't change that. I'm
Well,
sorry.
also the placement of your phone, that has a lot to do with it as well.
Is that
but
what
yeah.
it is? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's the Kim Kardashian in you. There you go. See, you're good at selfies. Anyway, a couple of thoughts on that. So I started using LinkedIn years and years ago. In fact, I started using LinkedIn when I was an outside sales representative. I learned very quickly that stellar salespeople are great marketers. You have to be. And you have to embrace that part of the sales process. If you really are going to be someone who doesn't struggle with cold calls because people know who you are, then you've got to be a good marketer. If you want to be the person that can pick up the phone, you've got a trip, you've got a sales call trip here in a couple of weeks. You want to pick up the phone, you want to set up some individual sales calls, and people are more than willing to meet with you because they know who you are. They know your face. They've interacted with you on social media. You're a great marketer, right? And really they work in tandem. And I think that sales representatives really should embrace that aspect of the job. I think that number one, it's not only fun, and I get it. Everybody, has different levels of comfort with putting their image out there. I understand that and I respect that. But in my experience, it has allowed me to walk into many doors without much resistance. It has allowed me to talk to many, many people of influence in deals that I wanted to get closed, because they've seen my posts, because they've seen my blogs, because they follow me on LinkedIn. So the two work hand in hand. And I realize that when you work for an organization like Sedgwick, and Sedgwick might be an exception because you're hearing it from Jonathan today, there's an encouragement internally, right, for their people to be, to some degree, marketers, right, online, to participate in the virtual dialogue, whether it's for personal branding or whether it's for corporate branding. I realize that for other organizations that are the size of Sedgwick, there are very strict marketing guidelines, very strict marketing protocols that oftentimes does prohibit individuals outside of the marketing suite to speak for the company or to represent the company. And that's for good reason as well. But if we have any vice presidents of marketing and any decision makers from marketing on today's call, I would suggest you really have to reevaluate that position. You really should empower employees to speak for your company on behalf of your company, and you'll find what great progress you make, not only in brand building, but also in developing goodwill for your brand. I'll give you an example. I think it was in the early 90s, I believe. Do you guys remember Zappos? I'm sort of a shoe holic. I don't know if that's a thing. I love shoes. I love tennis shoes. I love dress shoes. I love chanclas. I love all sorts of shoes, right?
Pocket squares, ties, you got the whole thing, garment.
I love it all. I love my Herma lapel pin. I love it all, right? But anyway, a little plug there. Sorry, guys. I know.
You can't help but market, dude. You just can't help it.
Dude, I was born for it. I love it. I know. So it's a turnoff for some people. I get it. I'm sorry. But here's the thing. Zappos, right? Zappos, their CEO actually is on record for encouraging employees to share their experiences in working for the organization very early on. This was when social media was just starting to bud, right? This was when Facebook, I don't believe that Twitter was around at the time. They eventually, you're fortunate enough to work with. So they're going to make sure that the people that they work with, number one, think alike, think like they do, believe like they do, and value the same things they do. And in order to do that, you have to have a face. That doesn't happen with a faceless corporation, right? You have these big box organizations that are struggling today. We've seen the numbers. Our friend Joe Peduto has put up the numbers about the stagnant sales, about the plateau in sales for large organizations. That's because there isn't a face to it. People don't associate and they can't relate to a faceless corporation. So personal branding really has to be a big part of what you're doing if you are truly endeavoring to not have that plateau in your numbers. To Jonathan's point, spend a little bit of time a week. It doesn't take long. We get paid to do it, so we take a little bit longer on social media. But if your main job is to make cold calls and get to know new people, then spend just a little bit of time. Identify what days you want to do it. Be prescriptive about it. Think about the content. It won't hurt for you to send Jonathan or me an email. If you work for us, if you don't work for us and you just want our opinion, I'd be happy to give you my opinion on whatever content you want to put out there. But consult with your marketing people, on the types of messages that you want to put out. And I'm confident that they're going to be supportive of whatever you want to do, because you're all on the same page. You all want to keep those sales coming in. You want your brand recognition to continue to grow. And frankly, you want to support your customers. You want to let them know that you're still healthy, you're still alive, you're doing well, and your people are doing well. And that's all part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add real quick that, one of the things I always share. So first off, you still have to have social media guidelines as a company. Don't care if you're 3 people or 3 million. And granted, when you come on board, most people sign a whole bunch of stuff and don't read it, but you do need guidelines. Very fortunate it does come from the top down. Sedgwick, we've always had good leadership who supported. I'm a believer in give people more do's than don't. And then, the other part I always tell people, if you're sharing Sedgwick approved content from the Sedgwick brand LinkedIn page, let's say, that there's a very finite number of people in our very large organization who are approved to share that publicly. So if Tom or Sue or whoever reshare a Sedgwick post, they should have no fear. The person who's going to get fired if it's messed up is me or somebody else. We have vetted it, we have cross-vetted it, we have reread it. Things don't go out without having a stamp of approval. And so that's what I try to implore is, if you're worried about getting your toe wet, take the content we're already doing for you. It's approved. It's a seal of approval. And then the last point, way back, Gartner put out a graphic. Everybody that contributes to social media, there's a really tiny, 3%, and the 4 of us are in that. We're the contributors, new, whatever. And then there's 5 to 7 that were resharers, might comment, and then you had a whole bunch of lurkers who just like to look and be passive, and so that's why you continually have to re-recruit in your organization if you're talking about company and personal branding, because as people come in, you got to find the ones who are your super sharers type people, and then even the ones who are supportive and will at least like it or great. And then you just know that you're going to have 60% of your people are going to be just passive, but you have to keep re-recruiting, refining, finding those individuals who are going to be your big leaders in that area.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting right at the 45-minute-ish that we like to do. So kind of one final question for both of you. We talked during our prep session about return on investment and how to calculate that, and that some of that is changing in regards to conferences, whether they're hybrids, a combination of virtual, in-person, whether you want to be a sponsor, whether you want to be exhibitor, whether you just want to attend, evaluating return on investment on webinars, on written materials that you put out there. So do you have any hints, in regards to the new calibration of return on investment, where everybody, I think, is paying more attention to, does this bring value back? You can put a lot of stuff out there, and sometimes you have to throw stuff up against the wall to see what sticks, but you still want to be able to measure it. So the stuff that's good, you replicate. The stuff that's not, you kind of move on. So what are some thoughts that y'all have in regards to the transition towards maybe even a more refined look at return on investment from a marketing branding standpoint?
I'll start on that one if Jonathan doesn't mind. So I think that, the vast majority of ROI KPIs are going to remain the same, Mark. I think that individuals are still going to want to do their pre-event metrics, on various emails. They want to make sure that They can take a pulse of prospective buyer temperament, of buyer intent. Are they interested in hearing from you? Are they interested in meeting with you? Are they interested in certain content that's going to be offered at that conference? And so you can prepare for that conference beforehand and hit the ground running at the conference when you get there. I think that's all going to remain the same, right? Funnel influence. How many deals were you able to move down the sales funnel closer to closure? Demand generation, how many new leads? I think all of that is going to remain the same. The one thing that I think organizations need to be mindful of are metrics such as follow-up engagement. While it's not entirely new, I think that engagement is going to look different, right? Because we are still somewhat in a hybrid situation. The state of California and many other states have not opened totally. Some people are not comfortable with meeting with others until they are vaccinated, right? It's a social issue that we're all having conversations about. And so I think follow-up, post-conference follow-up is going to be key in how you do that and how you measure prospective buyer or prospective client temperament after the event. That's really going to be a big focus, right? Are they accepting invitations to your webinars? We did a webinar last week on a legislative update with a group down in Southern California. We broke records that day for registrations, and it was incredible to see because people aren't always unwilling to jump onto a webinar for instruction or for education. In fact, it's the opposite. You just have to find the things that they're passionate about, that's important to them right there and then. And you're going to find that engagement is going to be a lot better than you think, even through a webinar application. So those metrics, I think, are going to be key, Mark. In the past, the focus was really on new leads generated, opportunities, new relationships that you've started. I think going forward, there has to be a focus on the follow-up to those. Can you keep these people engaged, interested in your services, interested in your brand? And if not, how can you as an organization develop messaging to make sure that those relationships that you are fortunate and able to start in person continue on and nicely transition into the virtual setting?
Well, to piggyback on what Carlos said, we had already started looking differently at events pre-pandemic and understanding handling hundreds, trying to go to many different things in many different countries. And one of the big challenges is just, we know, have we just been doing this forever? And it's just, that's what we do and that's what we go to. Is there new business opportunities? Has the conference remained stagnant? Excuse me. Are we seeing that outcome? And then it's that follow-up. What happened at that event? Who went? Who did you talk to? What are we going to see? Some of our industry or groups within our company is long sales funnels. Others can be very fast. And so I think that's the key part is you have a finite amount of money to spend on events, regardless of what that is. I think webinars have existed where people went, and Carlos is right. If it's of great interest or a hot topic, people can still find time to hop onto that. But I think the engagement level at events, first of all, a lot of events you get CEUs, and I've heard that's one of the challenges. People really are like, granted, somebody can go and get a CEU, I guess, and sit in a big conference room and not pay attention, but there is that whole, am I going to watch something virtually, and what are we really educating or doing?
Yep.
And then we talked in our prep, I think way long ago when Facebook Live was a thing and Periscope and stuff, I shared how one of the early conferences when I came back to Sedgwick, I was live streaming Dave North, and somebody asked me, why are you sharing our content for free? And I'm like, well, because people who aren't here didn't pay, and maybe some of them will want to come back next year because they saw great content. And so whether it's an insight or not, what I think will come out of this whole thing is people want to be together, people want to have the human interaction, but we may be able to see more of, but hey, if you want a cafeteria plan for certain events, we'll offer digitally, you can watch the keynote and Mark Pugh's session, but if you want the whole thing and most people still want to come, make connections, you pay the full price. And so you just actually, for events, I think they may see a better opportunity. They may see more ways to bring people in, and it's not, I'm just going to say it's not, the death of in-person events is highly overrated. People are going to come back. People want to come back. We're just communal by nature. So if you really have a desire to be at something, you're going to make it happen. You're going to find that in your travel budget. These are the 2 things I need to go to. And can I have another $500 for 2 virtual events this year that are really worthwhile? I want to learn about California legislation. So that's where I think it's going to go. I still think it's very hard to measure virtual success, ROI, in what we've seen the past year. If you've hosted a digital virtual booth, man, it's painful for the most part. It can just be really challenging. Again, that whole virtually come in and what do? There's nothing the transactional piece is difficult.
Can I add to that, guys? At the end of the day, the individuals that you're interacting with, they have to be compensated for their time, right? Whether it's a partner that you're talking to, whether it's a prospective client or a client, they have to get something back for their time with you. You can compensate them by way of education. You can compensate them by way of other value add guidance that you provide to them. In a conference setting, it's very organic, right? Because they're already there. They're working 24 hours a day while they're there. They're talking shop the entire time. So it's a little bit easier to tap into the conversation that you want to have with them. Whereas if you happen to get them on a web chat, they're probably dealing with 100 fires from their office. They're dealing with, the crying baby in the back that that they're having to watch now because schools might be doing a hybrid situation as well. My son's school is doing both online and virtual learning. So the conference lends very organic benefits to it. And I would say to business leaders out there that are considering not going back to conferences because they feel that the virtual approach has been very, very effective. I would say really analyze your numbers, because you're going to find that you can't substitute in-person interaction. And as much as workers' compensation conferences have been under the microscope the last couple of years for the quality of content, pay to play, fee for service, et cetera, there's no replacing face-to-face interaction with prospects and clients. There are intangibles that will never come across in a virtual setting. We can try and replace them. We can get creative to try and get close to it. But at the end of the day, there's no replacing in-person interaction. Unfortunately, as an organization, we're still very active. We're still very focused on doing in-person networking, in-person engagement. We've continued to, or we have restarted our travel for the organization for networking purposes and business development purposes. So from that regard, we see a benefit in those intangibles that you get when you're sitting or standing next to someone face to face, right? As opposed to doing it in a virtual setting. The most successful companies are going to find a way to marry the two, because I don't think we're going to get away from the virtual stuff. I think that it's going to be here for a long, long, long time, if not indefinitely. And I think as much as I would like to think that I'm a very persuasive person, there are going to be some CMOs out there that feel that, going to conferences, live conferences is no longer a need, even after they see this presentation. But the most successful organizations are going to find a way to marry the two, in-person engagement to virtual engagement. And that's where you really should spend your time strategizing on how to take the progress that you make in person and have a smooth transition to get these people into your virtual engagement setting.
Well said by both of you. I think I agree on all those points. So, Mark, you got anything to add?
No, I think they covered it very well. We lots of great insights, and that's what we were hoping for. Hopefully the audience was able to write down some notes and things to think in terms of. Certainly, if you're not connected with Jonathan or Carlos on LinkedIn, definitely reach out to them.
Do it.
Was that?
I said, do it. Connect.
Yeah. That's part of your, that would be part of your 15 minutes today, is to connect with
That's right.
Jonathan, Carlos, and Tim and I.
That's awesome.
We really appreciate Jonathan and Carlos, y'all spending some time with us, all the great insights and the expertise that you brought. I think it was very beneficial. I saw a little bit of correspondence on LinkedIn of people that were not going to be able to attend in person and wanted to make sure it was recorded. So this will be uploaded to our Between Two Coasts YouTube channel. And so hopefully in the next couple of days or so, we'll get that uploaded. And so if anybody happened to miss it live, you can go back and take a look at it. Our episode 8, staying true to our second Thursday of each month, which we didn't stay true to this year or this month, but will be May 13th. We're still working on the panel and the theme, but watch out for us, and we'll get back more to you. So Tim?
Definitely. That's it. Thanks, guys. Jonathan, Carlos, thank you. We appreciate you guys' time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Take
Look forward
care.
to seeing you guys really soon.
Absolutely. In person, breakfast. I got
In
breakfast.
person. Yes. Yes.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.